Okay, so we have been seeing hyperbolic PDEs, their characteristics, and the ways of solving hyperbolic PDEs analytically through method of characteristics. And then we saw entropy solutions, weak solutions, and classical solutions, those stuff in partial differential equations section. And in CFD, we saw stability, von Neumann stability analysis, then consistency. And then we saw some numerical schemes specifically for hyperbolic PDEs. So we went into upwind schemes. So we saw Stigall, Warming, Van Leer, Rose, and then we saw some kinetic schemes which are also upwind, like KFVS, kinetic flux vector splitting, and relaxation schemes. So these are the contents that we have seen in CFD as of now. So now let us go to incompressible solvers. Like previously we saw one of the incompressible solver, like stream function vorticity. Then we shifted to compressible solvers. Now let us emphasize the importance of incompressible solvers, and then I'll show you Lattice-Boltzmann method, which is one of the incompressible solvers, and then we'll close the lectures. So today I'll show why the solvers for compressible and incompressible fluid flow are different. For that, we'll go through an analysis, and then finally we'll end up with some interpretation, and through that interpretation we'll know why separate solvers are required for incompressible flows. Why can't we use compressible flow solvers for solving incompressible flows? So for this we'll get to know the answer. So now let us first consider some 1D inviscid compressible flow equations. So we have mass conservation, momentum conservation, and energy conservation. So all of these equations are called as one. So now let us non-dimensionalize this system one. So x is non-dimensionalized with respect to the length L, some length L, and u is non-dimensionalized with respect to u infinity, which is a free stream. We consider it to be our free stream velocity. Similarly, all the other variables are in the free stream. And energy, internal energy, total energy, both of them are non-dimensionalized with respect to p by rho at the free stream. And time is as usual with respect to L by velocity, and T with respect to T infinity. So now if we substitute all of these quantities in our system 1, we'll get different equations. Those are non-dimensionalized equations. So let us first do that for 1A, which is mass conservation equation. So rho here is replaced by rho bar rho infinity, and rho bar is our non-dimensionalized variable, and rho infinity is the reference variable. So and T is substituted with T bar into L by u infinity from this point. And similarly, rho u again can be rho can be substituted as rho bar into rho infinity, and u can be substituted as u bar into u infinity. And x here in the denominator can be substituted as x bar into L. So now we can take out all the components which are at the free stream and have, because free stream values do not are constants basically with respect to any derivative, so they can be taken out. So they are being taken out, and then we get an equation uh, with respect to the reference variables only. I mean, it's not the reference variables, the non-dimensionalized variables. So this is the non-dimensionalized mass conservation equation. Similarly, we do for the momentum conservation equation, substituting all the values for actual variables and getting the equation in terms of non-dimensionalized variables. So here, in this case, we get this equation. So here, all of them are non-dimensional variables except for this quantity, p infinity by rho infinity u infinity squared. And for this, we are substituting Mach number. We call this as free stream Mach number basically. So we know Mach number is U by A, which is A is root of gamma into P by rho. So U squared is gamma P by rho. So this M squared is basically U squared rho U squared by gamma P. So if here we do not have a gamma in this free stream quantity, but still we take this quantity as M infinity squared. So this term becomes 1 by M infinity squared. So, but one thing you have to see is gamma is still a constant, it's a finite constant. So as M goes to 0, that is U by A, if it goes to 0, then M infinity will also go to 0. So we can use that interpretation. So they are both relatable, both M and M infinity. No, they are not relatable. M is the close field Mach number, whereas M infinity is the far field Mach number. So they are not relatable. However, since gamma, even if we have gamma over here in this part, it's not going to play any role, because if U infinity goes to 0, M infinity goes to 0. Since it's fixed, the approaching variables will remain the same. Since it's a fixed, gamma is a fixed constant, even if we don't use it, in the limit, this equation will remain the same as the equation which we have when we use gamma along with it. So since we'll be only considering what happens in the limit, so this is okay. So next, going to energy conservation equation. So this is our actual energy conservation equation, and then substituting our variables over there and separating out the reference and reference variables and the non-dimensional variables, we get an equation in terms of non-dimensionalized equation. So this is 2C is that equation. Now in this we can also substitute E as, we know H is E plus P by rho. We can obtain non-dimensionalized H, that is H bar, in this way. So it turns out that H bar is H by rho infinity by P infinity by rho infinity essentially. This is same as what we took for energy. So we took energy as E bar was E by P infinity by rho infinity. So the same thing happens for H as well. The same was for E bar and internal energy also. So this way our H also follows the same kind of non-dimensionalization as E. That is, it has the same reference as E. And similarly, we can find what E bar is in terms of non-dimensional variables. We know E is E plus half U squared. So in this, we can substitute E as E bar into P infinity by rho infinity, and internal energy also in the same way, and U also in the same way. So now these quantities, when taken to the other side, we get such an equation, and this is essentially our Mach number at the free stream, that is Mach squared at the free stream. So we get such an equation. So this is the actual total energy equation, and this is the non-dimensionalized total energy equation. And next, let us find the equation of state, the non-dimensionalized equation of state. This is our ideal gas equation of state in terms of actual variables. So here, if we substitute the expressions for each of the variables, we will get to separate the non-dimensionalized variables from the reference variables. So that way, it turns out that P bar is rho bar into T bar. So this is our equation of state. We do not have an R over here, unlike the original actual equation. Next, let us now find the expression for internal energy. So this follows this takes the same form. The non-dimensionalized internal energy is same as the actual internal energy. through substitutions, we get to know that as well. So what we have done as of now is we have converted our actual conservation equations into non-dimensionalized conservation equations, and then we have evaluated our equation of state in terms of non-dimensionalized variables and internal energy as well. Also total energy in terms of internal energy, velocity and Mach number at the free stream. So as of now, we have done only this. Now let us do an asymptotic analysis. That is an analysis we expand all the primitive variables, pressure, density and velocity in terms of Mach number at infinity, the free stream Mach number. We know all of them are functions of free stream Mach number, so we can expand them in terms of that. So all the quantities, so P bar here is written as P naught bar plus P1 bar into Mach number at free stream plus P2 bar into Mach number at free stream, and it goes on for higher orders. So we'll be interested in only the first three terms. Similarly, density and velocity are expanded. So now these are the primitive variables. We have expanded them. Now let us see how conserved variables are transformed because of this expansion. So we know our conserved variables are rho, rho u and rho e. So we can expand. Rho bar has already, u, first component of the vector u, the conserved variable vector is rho, and that has already been expanded because it's the primitive variable as well. So we have expanded it in terms of Mach number already. Now let us expand the second component of conserved variable vector, which is rho u. So momentum, non-dimensionalized momentum can be expanded in this way. So we know rho bar from here and u bar can also be known from here. And if we substitute both of them over here, we get, then we can multiply each of the components and we get to separate order 0, order 1 and order 2 terms. So now this becomes our order 0 term, and this is our order 1 momentum, and this is our order 2 momentum. So from these we can simply find u0 bar, u1 bar and u2 bar because this is equal to this. So we can find u0 bar as this expression. Similarly, these two are equal. So from this equality we get u1 bar as this equation. Similarly, u2 bar can be found out from this equality. So now we have found an expression for non-dimensionalized momentum. Similarly, we can find an expression for non-dimensionalized energy. So E bar can be written as internal energy plus half u squared into max squared, non-dimensionalized basically. So now if we multiply this equation by rho bar, we get this expression. So we know E bar, we have found an expression for E bar previously, internal energy bar. So that can be written as P bar into P bar by gamma minus 1, and this has been retained. So this is our expression for rho E bar. So now we know what P bar is. We have expanded it. And we know what u squared is, u bar squared, which is this one. So we can substitute them all here. And then we can do the multiplication. And finally, we get this expression. So this is our 0th order term for rho E bar. And this is first order term. And this is our second order non-dimensionalized energy. So now we have found the non-dimensionalized momentum and non-dimensionalized energy. So these are equations that correspond to these equations basically. Now let us expand temperature. We have as of now expanded density, pressure and velocity, and then we also expanded the conserved variables, mass, momentum and energy. So now let us expand this temperature as T bar can be expanded as T naught bar plus T1 bar plus in terms of Mach number. So now we can find out the equation of state. We have evaluated the non-dimensionalized equation of state, but still we can compare the orders and get a neat expression. So P bar can be written in the expanded form as this, and rho bar can be written in the expanded form as this equation, and T bar as this expression. So now we can multiply the two terms on the right hand side and get to this part. So here we have different terms. In the left hand side we have order 0, order 1 and order 2 terms. Same in the right hand side we have some order 0, order 1 and order 2 terms. So we can compare them. So this and this can be compared. Order 0 terms can be compared and we get P naught bar as rho naught bar into T naught bar. So from this we get to know what T naught bar is. Similarly, we can compare the first order terms, equate them and get to know what T1 bar is. Similarly, if we compare the second order terms, we get this expression and then we find out what T2 bar is. So that way we get all the non-dimensionalized variables. Now, now that we have found all the non-dimensionalized variables, uh, both primitive and conserved variables, we can substitute them in our expansions. We found out the non-dimensionalized equations that correspond to original Euler's equations, right? So these we had 2a, 2b and 2c as the non-dimensionalized mass, momentum and energy conservation equations. So now we can substitute all these non-dimensionalized variables that we just now found in these equations. So first I'm doing it in mass conservation equation. So rho bar can be substituted over here and rho bar into u bar we have found out as this one. So they can be substituted. And this also can be separate. This equation now has terms of different orders. It has zeroth order terms, first order, second order, all order terms are present in this equation. Now each of the terms that of a specific order each of the terms that are of a specific order must be equal to 0. So now I have separated out this equation in terms of order. So basically this is the first order term and it is this term and this term combined together is the first order term and this combined together is the this is the zeroth order, this is the first order and this is the second order terms. Now each of them must individually be equal to 0 because they are of different orders. So we would want them to be individually equal to 0. Similarly, now let us substitute in our momentum conservation equation, that is non-dimensionalized momentum conservation equation. So if we do the same procedure, same process of substituting the variables and then separating out different order terms, we'll get such an equation basically. So this is of order 1 by m infinity and this is of order 1 by m infinity squared and this is of order 0, m infinity power 0. And I have written this equation only up to order 0, that is m infinity power 1 terms are not written over here. So now we would want this term to be equal to 0 and from this we get dou by dou xp naught bar to be equal to 0 and from this we get this to be equal to 0. Similarly, if we substitute our variables, the variables that we have found just now into the non-dimensionalized energy conservation equation, we get this equation. So this or this, just I have substituted the equation of state and have transformed this equation into this equation. So basically we get this equation. So now we have some consequences. So right now what we have done is we have transformed we have through substitution, we have changed our actual conservation equations into non-dimensionalized conservation equations. And then we substituted the variables. We expanded each of the variables in terms of Mach number. And then we substituted them and we separated out the equations in terms of orders. Then we took out the specific equations corresponding to each orders and made them equal to 0. So that's what we have done as of now. So now this has certain consequences. So from this, we can interpret certain things from this analysis. So first is as Mach number goes to 0, Mach squared also will go to 0, and order of all terms of order m infinity per n for n greater than 1 can be neglected. Only m infinity per 0 and m infinity per -1, -2, those terms can be considered. All other terms can be neglected. If Mach number goes to 0, all terms of order m infinity per n for all n greater than 1 can be neglected. So in this case, only the boxed equations will be valid. So from mass conservation, we have this blue equation, which is of order 0. These are all of order m infinity and m infinity squared. These won't be valid anymore. Similarly, from the momentum conservation equation, only these boxed equations will be valid. So this is of order 0, and this is of order m infinity squared, and order 1 by m infinity squared, and this is of order 1 by m infinity. So these will primarily be going to infinity, and this will be of order 1, and these things will go to 0. So only these boxed quantities will be considered. Similarly, for energy conservation, I've written only the boxed equation. This is only order 0th equation. So now, if we look at these equations now, the boxed equation here has rho naught bar and rho bar u bar naught terms. Similarly, these are not evolution equations. So this is the only evolution equation. These basically become the constraints. We can, of course, satisfy them easily. We'll have to look at the evolution equations. So these quantities are at 0th order, whereas P2 bar is the second order term. This is, however, this in the equation it becomes 0th order. P2 bar corresponds to, it's we in the P bar, we expanded P bar, right? P2 bar corresponded to of order m infinity squared. So P2 bar is separately order 1, but it gets multiplied with m infinity squared. So P bar is if totally P bar is taken, these terms won't, these terms will actually be neglected. But upon substitution, upon doing these analysis, the whole analysis, P2 bar appears in this 0th order equation. So we somehow need this P2 bar to evaluate, to do this evolution. And similarly, this equation will contain only P naught bar and U naught bar. So basically, if you consider, these three equations, the evolved quantities are rho naught bar, here U naught bar, and here P naught bar, basically. I'll talk about this over here. I've written the same equations over here. All those boxed equations are written over here. So now if you look at this, the mass conservation equation, input is, so it takes U bar naught as input, and it gives output as rho naught bar. And if you look at the momentum conservation input equation, inputs are rho naught bar and P2 bar. So P2 bar is the input and rho naught bar is the input, and it gives out U naught bar here. If you look at dou by dou t, it's evolving over time. So rho bar U bar is evolving over time. So U naught bar is essentially the output, and rho naught bar and P2 bar are the inputs. Here, if you look at the energy conservation equation, U naught bar is the input and P naught bar is the output. So now, if you just look at the outputs and inputs, the output given by mass conservation is rho naught bar, and it's used as input by both momentum equation alone, not energy equation. So rho naught bar, which is the output of mass conservation equation, is becoming the input for momentum conservation equation. And if you look at the momentum conservation equation, the output is U naught bar, and this output is being used as input by both mass and energy conservation equations. Similarly, if you look at P naught bar, the energy conservation equation, the output is P naught bar. But the thing here is, this output is not used as input by the other two equations. And both mass and momentum conservation equations do not require this P naught bar as input. So that is the reason why we do not use energy conservation, why it is not really required to use energy conservation equation for solving incompressible flows. The output from energy conservation equation is not becoming the input for any or either of mass and momentum conservation equations. There is a strong coupling between these two equations while solving incompressible flows. However, this equation gets decoupled from the other two equations because the output which this equation gives is not being used as input by the other two equations. Energy equation only takes the input, and the output that it gives to the system is not really being taken by the other two equations. So we do not require the energy equation to solve the system. So this is this is the reason why we don't use energy conservation equation for solving incompressible flows. Okay, and next, one more thing, P2 bar is required as input, right? However, one more thing to add on to this, we don't really have to use energy conservation equation to solve an incompressible system. However, if we want to keep track of how the pressure and temperature varies over time, they won't vary. However, still, if we want to, keep track of them, we can still have energy equation in our system to see how these things behave. However, these things which are outputs of energy equation will not be used by the other two equations in the system. So we use this energy equation only if we want to see how these variables behave. Otherwise, it's not really required to use energy equation to solve incompressible flows. So this is one thing. And the next is, we have one another variable P2 bar. This is being used as input for momentum conservation equation, but still this is not an output given by any of the equations. So, however, P2 bar still varies over time, but it's not an output from any of the equations. So that is one problem. How do we find this P2 bar? We require this P2 bar as an input to solve the system. However, it's not an output from any of the things. So this is one major problem which is prevailing in incompressible flow solvers. We know P2 bar becomes an output of order m infinity squared energy equation, because this boxed equation is just order zeroth equation. If we consider order m infinity squared equation, P2 bar will be the output of that equation. But however, in the low Mach number limit, that equation is negligible. I mean, that equation is not really valid. So that's why we cannot take an output from that equation. But still, we require that output. I mean, we require P2 bar to solve this momentum equation, zeroth order momentum equation itself. So this is one problem. Next, let us see how the pressure terms are, called as. So first order pressure is known as thermodynamic pressure, the one which appears in the energy equation, zeroth order energy equation basically. So this is thermodynamic pressure, and the first order pressure, that is P1 bar into m infinity. So this is known as small acoustic pressure, and the second order pressure is a very small incompressible pressure. This interpretation is given by Muller in the year 93. So this is one interpretation. Next, the third one is, just look at the zeroth order energy equation. So we have divergence of velocity over here. So now we can see that divergence of zeroth order velocity is affected by the time rate of change of zeroth order pressure. So this is one interpretation. But if you look at the mass conservation equation, if we consider incompressible limit, that is rho naught bar if rho naught bar does not vary over time, this becomes 0, and this will essentially become divergence of velocity. That will go to 0. But however, energy equation says that divergence of velocity is affected by time rate of change of zeroth order pressure. So divergence of velocity has an effect over there. I mean, has an effect of pressure. It's dependent on the time rate of change of zeroth order pressure. So this is one interpretation. So next is, we know that the Mach number, as m infinity goes to 0, the density changes will become very less. So mass conservation equation essentially becomes divergence of velocity equals 0. So mass conservation equation is no longer an evolution equation. It just becomes a constraint on the divergence of velocity. So these are some interpretations of the analysis that we made. So now, following that, let us see some numerical methods for incompressible solvers. We have seen this last time, previously earlier. So we have pressure elimination methods. Those are either under these we have vorticity stream function or vorticity velocity potential methods. We essentially eliminate the pressure variation there. So we have seen this stream function vorticity method some time back. If you would have noticed there, we transform the momentum equations in x and y into vorticity equations. Basically, they while doing that, we added the x and y momentum equations. That way, the pressure variations will cancel out. So there, the pressure gets eliminated because of that. So that is why these methods are known as pressure elimination methods. Next, we have the pressure-based methods, where pressure is being used. So pressure Poisson equations based methods, and we have simple semi-implicit method for pressure link equations. And follow up for simple, there are simpler, Simplex, and some other algorithms. And we have projection method, piezo, pressure implicit with splitting of operators. These are essentially pressure-based methods. And there are density-based methods, and one among them will be artificial compressibility method. And then we have the so-called Lattice-Boltzmann method. So in these, we have seen this pressure elimination method earlier. We won't be seeing these two things. We will be seeing Lattice-Boltzmann method now. Yeah. So I'll go to Lattice-Boltzmann method now. Yeah. Any doubts in this?
As of right now.
Okay. So we'll go to Lattice-Boltzmann method. So before seeing the details of Lattice-Boltzmann method, let us see some time scales involved. So there are some length and time scales. So LA here is the size of fluid atom or molecule, like as small as possible. How much ever we want to take, we can either consider atom or molecule. And mean free path is the distance traveled between two successive collisions. That is, the molecules will travel, and before they'll be moving, they'll be convecting essentially, and colliding. So between two collisions, they'll be moving, right? And that distance is known as mean free path. And L is the typical scale for gradient and macroscopic properties. So while which means that this L is the length where we consider our macroscopic variables to be continuous. From after that point, our macroscopic variables will seem continuous, but before that, less than L, our macroscopic variables will not seem continuous. Greater than L, our macroscopic variables will seem continuous. So that is the point where we are allowed to take gradient of macroscopic properties. And LS is the size of the system, the full system, the domain under consideration. So these are some length scales. And TC is the collision time. So it's basically LA by VT, that is the size of fluid atom or molecule divided by the average thermal velocity of molecules. Usually our macroscopic velocity is much lesser than the average thermal velocity. And then mean free path is defined by this, mean free length by average thermal velocity. And convection time is defined by this, L by U. L is the length where we are allowed to take gradients of macroscopic properties, and use the macroscopic velocity. I mean, convection is a macroscopic property, right? So here we have used macroscopic variables, and diffusion is also a macroscopic property. So here we have used L squared by nu. Nu is here is the kinematic viscosity. And Knudsen number is defined by this mean free length by the gradient length. So if Knudsen number is much lesser than 1, we go for a hydrodynamic picture, and if it's greater than or equal to 1, we go for kinetic theory description. So now we have some definition. So macroscopic means in macroscopic consideration, we look for variables such as density, velocity, and pressure. We look for their evolution. And in the microscopic, we look for the evolution of individual molecules. We track each of them separately. In the mesoscopic scale, we look for distribution of particles. I think we have seen this quite some time back in kinetic theory thing. So mesoscopic essentially involves evolution of distribution of particles. So we know that particle distribution function is given by this. It's dependent on position, molecular velocity, and time, and it represents the probability of finding a particle at the specific position, velocity, and at that specific time. So this is the probability distribution function. Now I'll write the Boltzmann's equation without force term. So this is it. This is the temporal derivative, and this is a convection part. I have not included the force term over here, and we have this collision operator. So I'm writing this operator as this separate. We can of course write this equation as something like L into L of f. So this whole left hand side can be written as LF, right? So L is basically the streaming operator, and omega is the collision operator. The left hand side will only represent streaming, whereas the right hand side will represent collision. So Boltzmann's collision operator is an integral differential operator, whereas a BJK collision operator is a simple relaxation operator. It has it's basically -1 by tau into F minus F equilibrium, where F equilibrium is an equilibrium distribution function of the particles. So after collision, particles will be convecting, and once they collide, the particles will take different. Each particle will take a different velocity, different position, right? They'll be changing. So there'll be some F, that is one specific distribution of particles. I mean, by this I mean that there'll be some particle distribution. So let's call this F. This whole distribution will be convecting. They'll be going in different directions, of course. And after convecting, each of them will be each of the particles over here will be colliding with some other particles. And this distribution will essentially change into some other distribution. Like they'll take different position, different velocity after collision. So during collision, what happens is this redistribution, like local redistribution of F will happen during collisions. So tau here is the, we have this BGK collision operator, which is given by this expression, and tau here was our relaxation time. And during collision, F will move towards F equilibrium. So these are the moments. So when we take zeroth moment of F, we get rho. The first moment with respect to V vector will give momentum, and the second moment with respect to mod V square will give energy. And this is when internal energy is not considered. That is when there is only translational degrees of freedom. When there is non-translational, we have to consider an internal energy variable also. We have seen about this when we were looking at kinetic theory basics. Yeah. So, and F equilibrium, so these these moments of F will give macroscopic variables, and similarly, the same moments of F equilibrium will also give the macroscopic variables that we desire. So F equilibrium is this Maxwellian distribution Gaussian distribution function, and F, it's a function of macroscopic variables rho, u, and t, and also it's a function of microscopic velocity. See, we have the molecular velocities over here. So it's a function of molecular velocity and the macroscopic variables. So size, we have introduced the psi vector to just go from the Boltzmann's equation to Euler's equation. So this is our Euler's equation. If we multiply this equation by psi and integrate it with respect to velocity, we go to this equation, the macroscopic system. The first component will result in energy conservation, mass conservation. The next three will result in corresponding momentum conservation equations, and this will result in energy conservation. So that's what is happening over here. So in the first case, that is here, VB is not a function of x beta, V beta. And so V beta is basically not a function of x beta, so it can be taken inside. So this is like psi into f. So 1 into f is f only. When it's integrated with respect to velocity, it gives density. So that's what is over here. And this is basically dou by dou x beta into v beta into f. So psi for the mass equation is just 1. So 1 into v beta into f, when that is integrated with respect to velocity, which is essentially this equation. So we get rho u beta over here. Similarly, for the momentum equation, we have one V1 over here. So it's essentially V1 into F. So psi F becomes V1 into F dV. So in that case, it becomes rho u. We get this part, this value. But if you look at this part, it becomes V1 into V beta into F over here, because this psi into V beta into F will result in V1 into V beta into F. So that is not defined in this among these three. So we'll have to define it separately. So V1 into V beta into F is what we get for the first equation. Similarly, for the second equation, we'll get V2 into V beta into F. And for third equation, we'll get something V3 into V beta into F. In general, we are taking it as alpha. Pi alpha beta is this expression. So each of these V alpha is to V alpha we add and subtract U alpha, and similarly to V beta we add and subtract U beta. So then these, when separated, through multiplication, we get this expression. So these two terms are essentially equal to 0 because U beta can be taken out. This is a macroscopic variable. So this integral can be separated into U beta into integral V alpha, minus u alpha u beta into integral f. So integral f will give rho and integral v alpha f will give rho u alpha. So this and this are essentially same. So this whole thing will go to 0. For the same reason, this term will also go to 0. And here, since u alpha u beta are constants, we can take them out and integral f will give rho u alpha u beta. And this is the term that we end up with. So this we call as minus sigma alpha beta. So this is equivalent to our stress tensor. So this pi alpha beta becomes rho u alpha u beta minus sigma alpha beta. So this is our this appears in our Euler's equation, right? We, for the first term, we have rho u1 square. We have something like minus p delta ij plus rho uj. This is something we have. So this is exactly similar to that. This is basically the pressure term. I mean, equivalent of pressure from the kinetic theory basics. So similarly, this third energy component, we have defined this rho. For energy conservation equation, we get psi becomes half into mod v squared. So that gets multiplied by f. So half into mod v squared into f, when that is integrated with respect to velocity, we get dense total energy. So this becomes total energy. And here for the momentum, for the convection part, we get half into mod v squared into v beta into f. So that has to be integrated. We have not yet defined how that will turn out to be over here. So we'll have to separately define, like how we define pi alpha beta. So we'll have a separate definition for pi alpha alpha beta also. So I have not defined that over here. So basically these three equations are simply written as this equation, one single equation. And this pi alpha beta we have found out to be this one, minus sigma alpha beta plus rho u alpha u beta. So I've substituted that over here and that is this equation. And in the similar way, energy equation can be written as something like this. So pi alpha alpha beta has been expanded in this form. So we have found out, we have not derived that part. So like how we derived this pi alpha beta, we have defined we got some integral plus rho u alpha u beta. So we called that integral as minus sigma alpha beta. Similar way, here we end up getting sigma alpha beta and q beta is known as is this integral. We would be getting this integral and we call that integral as q beta in the same way. So now these are dependent on the form of f basically, because these are integrals, right? So how they vary with respect to the form of f. But the other things, they are all fixed quantities. That is, they are all macroscopic variables. But these two things are all still dependent on microscopic form. You see, all of them through this, upon this integration, since we defined this basic conserved moments, we were able to obtain these quantities as macroscopic variables. Only these two variables are still remaining in terms of the microscopic variable, which is f. And these only appear in viscous and heat diffusion part. Otherwise, if we neglect these two, then we'll get the Euler's equation. That is why we say that in local equilibrium terms, we get Euler's equation. If equilibrium is disturbed, we look for viscosity also. We have seen about these things when we were talking kinetic theory some time back. So I'm just going through the things to get into Lattice-Boltzmann method. So now, if we take f as f equilibrium, these two terms, sigma alpha beta and q beta, will go to 0 and we'll get back Euler's equations. So if we take if we do perturbation expansion on f in terms of Knudsen number, if we take Knudsen number as the basic variable with respect to which we do perturbation expansion, then we'll get this equation. So in this equation, if we just take the first two terms and substitute it over everywhere and do the so-called Chapman and Skog analysis, we'll get the Navier-Stokes equations. So this is the some basic gist of kinetic theory. Now we'll get into Lattice-Boltzmann method. For that, we'll first see how Lattice-Boltzmann equation is derived. So I've written the Boltzmann's equation without force term in, and that equation is, it has velocity, position, and time as its independent variables. So we have seen method of characteristics, right? So this is our Boltzmann's equation, and by method of characteristics, I'm writing, when we were doing method of characteristics, we compared our equation under consideration with another equation. So this is that equation with which we compare one. So basically df by dt is dou f by dou t plus dou f by dou x beta into dx by beta by dt. For 1D, this summation won't be there. This is just to represent the number of dimensions. For 1D, we can just remove this part. So we'll have dou f by dou t plus dou f by dou x into dx by dt. So that can be compared with the Boltzmann's equation. So one left hand side of 1 and 2 will be equal if v equals dx by dt. So comparing 1 and 2, we get df by dt equals omega of f along this curve, dx beta by dt equals p beta. So along these curves, we have this equation. And we know omega of f as this BGK collision operator. And this curve can be found out by just a simple integration, provided if we know the initial point as x naught beta. So now along these curves, this equation is valid. So we can now do forward, numerically approximate this equation. I'm doing forward in time for this equation. So we'll get f at x plus delta x into v. This since delta x here is v beta into delta t because it's governed by this equation. So delta x here is supposed to be v beta into delta t. So delta x exactly is this, and v is the same, and t plus delta t. So this is the next position. So basically, Lattice-Boltzmann method. Suppose this is the time step t plus delta t, and this is the time step t, and you have 3 points. Say I minus 1 and I. These are also same points. The same points at different time steps. So if you have something over here, it will go towards here, provided if it has velocity in one dimension. I'm just calling it v for 1D. This is just a 1D picture of what is happening. So if this v is a velocity, so v into delta t will be equal to this delta x. So in the next time step, this part f will be in this position, right? So in the at the time step t plus delta t, f will be at x plus delta x into at t plus delta t, and at the previous time step it was at position x and at time t. So that is why we are evolving both a spatial variable and temporal variable, because we are going along this characteristic. Any doubts here?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So since it's forward in time, these variables are also evaluated at the previous time step, which is t. So now this equation can be written as, just algebra. I'm taking this to the left hand side and the other things are going to the right hand side. And beta here is the number of dimensions as told earlier. And now, as of now, in this equation, x and time, position and temporal variables are discretized. Velocity is still continuous. V vector is still continuous here. We have told that v equals dx by dt. We can take values from minus infinity to infinity. All variables in the real line, all values in the real line. So V is still continuous. Only position and temporal variables are discretized over here. So during simulations, we cannot keep doing integrations all the time to integrate things with respect to V. Since it's continuous and since it takes values from minus infinity to infinity, we'll have to integrate the whole this equation with respect to velocity from minus infinity to infinity to get the Euler's equations. In order to get rid of that, we can discretize velocity as well. It is instead of taking all values from minus infinity to infinity, we can take some finite number of velocities. Say for 1D we can take 3 or 4, 5 or whatever. So some finite number can be taken and each particle distribution will correspond to some specific velocity, and just instead of this integration we can do summation if we take some finite number. So from now on we'll be doing that. So we'll try to discretize the velocity space. We'll have to choose some finite number of velocities. So how are we going to choose is what we'll be talking about from now on. So this was our again, this is the point where we left the previous time step, but still in the here v vector is just a continuous function, but I am just discretizing it. I'm calling it as v vector I, and I belongs to some finite number of velocities, say n. And for each velocity, since f depends on v also, if v is just one I, okay, since here f depends on v, right? F is a function of v. These things have been discretized. To integrate, there are different, depending on what the value of v is, your f will differ. And we are integrating with respect to minus infinity to infinity, which means that f also runs from f also takes different values. Like for each value of v, f is different. So now I'm identifying this as similarly when we discretize that velocity, that is when we identify it by using some index I. For each of these velocities vi, there will be some specific fi. And each of those fi have to be summed to get, the macroscopic variables. So now summation fi will give us summation over I fi will give us the macroscopic variable rho, and summation vi fi will give rho u. All the moments that we have seen earlier, the 3 moments, these integrations will become summations. With fi, we'll have an fi over here. That's it. V's will be discretized. So that's how now the same equation will be used, just in discretized form. This is the continuous form of the Lattice-Boltzmann equation, and this is the discrete velocity form of the Lattice-Boltzmann equation. So now let us see how those velocities can be found. The finite number of velocities, how do we pick them? And so for that, first let us see the equilibrium distribution function, the Gaussian distribution function. So that is f equilibrium, that is given by this equation. So now here if we consider the discrete form of velocity, so here velocity is continuous. If we look at the discrete form, we'll have a vi. So I am just expanding it. Mod squared has been expanded, and fi, I'm putting an fi equilibrium instead of f equilibrium. So now this can be expanded, and the first term can be taken out, the other two terms have been written over here, and this now can be expanded like this. So in terms of Mach number, so basically these are Mach numbers. So u by a, u vector by a is Mach number, right? So u vector by a is Mach number dot producted with velocity vi by a. We have one term over here. Similarly, these have been split up in terms of Mach number. So now this expansion is essentially happening with respect to Mach number. Here m vector, since u is a vector, we can separate it into ux and uy. So mx is basically ux by a and my is uy by a. So I'm just writing m vector as mx, my and mez. So that's it. So Mach number is now written as a velocity. It's a vector because velocity can be written as a vector, and Mach number in each direction, I'm writing it as a vector. That's it. So now this is still a Mach. This is an expansion in Mach number, and this goes. It doesn't stop it. We have truncated it and have written over here, but still it's a low Mach number expansion. For high values of Mach number, this expansion will not be applicable. If Mach number is small, it's okay to have this truncation. Otherwise, this truncation will not work. So there is a built-in low Mach number expansion because we use the Gaussian distribution function, and because of that we get a built-in low Mach number expansion, and hence this is the reason why Lattice-Boltzmann method is suitable only for weakly compressible or incompressible flows. It's not used for real compressible flows. Okay, now we have found out the discretized equilibrium distribution function. Next we'll see the moments. So we have seen the continuous moments earlier. We had integrals. Now the discrete moments, we'll be having different summations. So but here you must notice that we have removed the energy equation, since from now we have argued previously that Lattice-Boltzmann is used only for incompressible flows. So that is why we have not defined the energy moment from here on. So we saw why energy can be removed earlier. So since Lattice-Boltzmann is for incompressible flows, we have removed the energy equation. So now if we do Chapman-Enskog analysis, we'll be able to link the Lattice-Boltzmann equation and Navier-Stokes equation. Navier-Stokes equations, in the sense now I'm talking about only mass and momentum conservation equations. So even in the Navier-Stokes part, we'll have some viscous terms. So okay, we saw, right, the viscous components were still integrals of f previously. Only the other components were defined in terms of macroscopic variables. The viscous and heat diffusion terms were still integrals, some integrals of f. Here there will be some summations of f, and they are basically this. If we do Chapman-Enskog analysis, we'll get to know what these expressions are. So here sigma alpha beta turns out to be this expression, and Fi non-equilibrium is basically F minus F equilibrium. So all the terms which are non-equilibrium components will be written as Fi non-equilibrium, and sigma alpha beta is now a function of this. So this 1 minus delta t by 2 tau is basically modified into, just some algebra is done, tau is taken out, and we are writing this in terms of nu. This is kinematic viscosity. So in in kinetic theory framework, we get to define the macroscopic viscosity, heat diffusion, and all. They are still defined. Like in macroscopic case, these coefficients, kinematic viscosity, dynamic viscosity, they'll have to be found through empirical analysis. Like through experiments, we'll have to find them empirically. Here we have an expression. In the kinetic theory basis, we have an expression for the viscosity coefficients and diffusion coefficients and all. So yeah, this is one advantage to start from kinetic theory. In lattice Boltzmann, we get to use that advantage because here we know in the macroscopic system, we know what our nu is. Okay, so finally we'll be getting some equation. So when you do Chapman-Enskog analysis, your mass conservation equation will be satisfied, and when you satisfy your momentum conservation equation, you will be getting the temporal part something like this. Yeah. Yeah, you get something like this. So now this is your diffusion part, and still that is not defined, right? You get to define it based on your initial conditions for your macroscopic system. You get to define your sigmas, and these relaxation times then get to be defined in terms of your macroscopic variables that you know. So these are the moments. Now the another advantage of lattice-Boltzmann method is that we can separate the equation into collision and relaxation steps. So this is the lattice-Boltzmann equation. So now this is the left hand side and this is the right hand side. So if you notice this equation, the left hand side is totally at the next time step, future time step, whereas the right hand side is totally at the current time step. So we can these things are all known. The right hand side is known. So from the current time step, so you can evaluate this and call this as f star at the current time step. And next, this is the first step, and next is the streaming step where this where you call the particle distribution at the next time step t plus delta t as the previous time step f star. But you should notice that the position variable also gets changed. Okay, I talked about this previously, so it's like first in the lattice-Boltzmann equation can be split up into two steps. In the first step, you know all the values over here at the time step t. You know f equilibrium, everything is known, so you can evaluate this right hand side from here. So after this is the first step in lattice-Boltzmann equation. So all these values are evaluated, and the next step is the values that are evaluated just go to this position exactly. Okay, based on the velocity. So if this velocity can be positive, so let me take now three distributions. F1 will go with positive velocity, F2 with zero velocity, and F3 with negative velocity. Suppose that this happens. So now at each point you will have all F1, F2, F3. At all these points you will be having F1, F2, F3, and F1 from this point, F1 from the point I minus 1 will go to I in the next time step, and F2 from the point I will go to I itself, and F3 from the point I will go, I plus 1 will go to I. And this velocity lambda 0 and minus lambda. And lambda here can be taken as delta x by delta t. So this is the second time step where the particles move from one location to other location. Any doubts here?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So now these are the two primary steps involved in Lattice-Boltzmann method. You have collision and then streaming. So next is how do you implement this method in a computer. So Lattice-Boltzmann method is basically used to solve macroscopic equations only, but you solve it from the using the input of kinetic schemes. So initially what happens is at time t equals 0, at the initial time step, you know all your macroscopic variables, rho and u. Yeah, these are the two macroscopic variables in the incompressible point of view. So you'll be knowing rho and u at all the lattice points, at all points at this initial time step. So now using this, you can find out F equilibrium. F equilibrium is a function of rho, u and molecular velocity. And molecular velocity, we are going to fix them. Here, like how we fixed for 1D, I've taken lambda 0 and minus lambda corresponding to F1, F2 and F3. So F1 equilibrium, F2 equilibrium and F3 equilibrium can be found at all the lattice points. Okay, then this is what happens at the initial time step. After that, equilibrium is defined. Then you go for this collision step, right? So I'll take this over here. So this equilibrium is now defined. Okay, so now you define, for the initial time step, you also need to define F. F equilibrium has been defined, you also have to define F. You just take F1, F2, F3 as to be equal to F1 equilibrium, F2 to be equal to F2 equilibrium, and F3 to be equal to F3 equilibrium. So just for the initial time step, you take these things. Okay, after taking this, just for the initial time step, you take this, then do collision. The first step, that is this. Using, you have F equilibrium. You will have to determine what tau has to be. Like you can fix that. Usually, delta t by tau is written as omega, and this has to lie between 0 less than omega less than 2. For this you'll have to do a separate analysis, and just a stability analysis will help us see why delta t by tau has to lie between 0 and 2. So that way you can fix tau. Based on this condition, tau can be fixed. So since F equilibrium and tau are known, you can now find out Fi star. So that is the collision step. You go on with the collision step. You find out Fi star and then propagate. I mean, the propagation step is you from Fi star you find out Fi at t plus delta t. Use the second step. So this step is now being used. So from Fi star you find out Fi, then you apply boundary conditions. There is a separate chart. I mean, there is a lot of thing going on in Lattice-Boltzmann boundary conditions. So you'll have to apply boundary conditions in terms of F. The macroscopic variables will have to be converted to in terms of F to apply boundary conditions. So I'm not discussing how boundary conditions are being applied in Lattice-Boltzmann method. So that's a research area as of now. Even Lattice-Boltzmann method for compressible flows is a research area only. So after this collision propagation step, you apply boundary conditions in terms of F. Now you have obtained the values at the next time step, right? These are at time step t plus delta t. Now you take this t plus delta t to be t, and then you go on to the next step. That is, you have now found out f at the through this propagation. You have now found out f at the current positions. Now for each of those f's, you would have found out f1, f2, f3, because each of them are going to propagate. All f1, f2, f3 will follow these propagation, collision and propagation steps basically. So you would have found out all of these things at each and every point in the next time step. Now you take moment, you take summation of. So at each point you will know what f1, f2, f3 is. You basically take summation fi, so that you get rho. And if you take summation I vi fi, you get rho u. So from, since you know rho, already, you can find u. From using these two, you can find what u is. So you basically can find rho and u. Now, since you know rho and u, you can find out the equilibrium distribution function for the next time step. F1 equilibrium, F2 equilibrium, and F3 equilibrium. So you know, right? They are of some specific form. This is the form. So this is that form. So which consists of rho and u. Molecular velocities are also used. So that those things are lambdas, right? So they are in your hand now. So you can determine these expressions, F equilibrium. And meanwhile, if you want to if you want to store these rho and u, you can store them if you want. If not, you can leave them. Next, you go for the collision step. Since you know F equilibrium, you find what F star is. You know F, you have F from the previous step. At each and every point, you know what F1, F2, and F3 are. And after taking moment, you have found out F equilibrium also. Now use both of them to find F star using this collision equation. Next, propagate, and it goes on like this. So this is how you implement lattice-Boltzmann schemes. Now, one thing I've not defined is how do you define lambda? I've just talked about lambdas here, but how do you define them? So we have various ways of defining. So primarily, there are different equilibrium distribution functions also. So this is the basic type of equilibrium distribution function that was introduced in the traditional lattice-Boltzmann schemes. Nowadays, we can use different equilibrium distributions as well. Like these need not be strictly followed. This is quite a complex equilibrium distribution function. We can also use some simple equilibrium distribution functions that can still give the results that we desire. So nowadays we use simple equilibrium distribution functions, but the one that I am showing now is the traditional form of using the equilibrium distribution functions, and corresponding to that equilibrium distribution function, we can find out these velocities, discrete velocities. So now I'll show how to discretize the velocity space. So for that, let us first see this conserved variable vector, and it's obtained by taking the moment, usually integration. From the kinetic theory background, if we do lattice-Boltzmann, we have to take summation, but provided we have to know what these velocities are going to be. Right now we are trying to see what the finite number of discrete velocities are. So for that, that has to come out of the continuous interpretation. So first I'm starting with the continuous form itself. Now velocity can go from -infinity to infinity. So here I'm substituting F equilibrium. So F equilibrium is the whole expression, and this can be simplified. Each of these terms can be multiplied, and they can be separated into different terms. That's why we have 4 terms over here. And here, if you look at these equations, all of them have this v squared by 2rt term coming up. So you can do substitution for this term as m squared, and dm now is this. And as v goes from -infinity to infinity, m also goes from -infinity to infinity. So your limit doesn't change. Um, so yeah, now I've just substituted this, uh, substituted m in place of v. So you have a different equation. I'm calling it as A. So now, if you look at this equation A, we have integrals of this type. M power n, e power minus m squared. See, e power minus m squared is common in all the equations, and m is getting some power of m is getting multiplied. Here m power 0, m power 1, m power 2. Same m. This is m power 1, m squared, m cube. So everywhere m is getting some power of m is getting multiplied. So here n lies between n belongs to this whole number set. So now we need to evaluate this integral. So for integrals of this type, we can use Gauss-Hermite quadrature. So which is given by this. So some integral of this form can be written as this summation, provide at some certain points I. This integral runs from minus infinity to infinity. For m lying between minus infinity to infinity, this integral can be approximated by this summation for some specific values of m. And there are n number of sample points for m. I mean, m can take only n number of values from I equals 1 to n. And each of those points, so suppose if this is the real line for m, in this case you consider m from minus infinity to infinity, whereas in this case you consider some specific points, call them I equals 1, 2, 3 and so on up to n. And in each of these points you will evaluate this function phi, and they'll be multiplied by some weight determined by the roots of the Hermite polynomial. I mean, mi are the roots of Hermite polynomial. These positions are basically the roots of Hermite polynomial, and weights are given by this expression. So this is a Hermite polynomial, and weights are given by this. Okay, so now let us see this this will sometimes be approximate and sometimes be exact. That is, for some up to certain number of n, it will be approximate, and after beyond some n, it will always be exact. So, excuse me for a while. Okay, yeah. So let me first take n as 1. So now we only have 1 point. So in this real line, we only consider 1 point for one value for m. So for that, in that case, our Hermite polynomial will become something like this. It will become 2m. So I'm just, and here it's a Hermite polynomial is a function of n. So when we take n equals 1, this polynomial will transform into this equation. This d power n by dm power n will become d by dm. So in that case, we'll get this expression. We'll get h1 will become 2m. And now these mi are roots of h and m. So we have found out h1 of m, that is 2m. So now for roots of h1, we'll have to just equate h1 to 0. So 2m equals 0, we get m to be 0. So we know m squared was, we defined m squared as v squared by 2rt over here. So m squared is 0 and v squared by 2rt is also 0. So v is 0. So essentially our velocity here is 0. So correspondingly the weight, we have found out the root m now. Now we'll have to find out the weight corresponding to that root. So that can now be evaluated based on this expression that we have. So that is root pi. So basically now this integral can now be that is this integral can now be written as just summation. So since we have only one point, we do not have any summation. That essentially becomes the first integral e power minus m squared. When m power, for m power 0 it becomes root pi. For m power 1 the integral becomes 0. For m squared we have 0, and for m cube we have 0. But this integral is not 0 all the time. This basically this gives wrong answer, because we have just taken one point and that is not sufficient. We'll see what happens for n equals 3. So for n equals 3, your h and m will transform into something like this. It's h3 of m. We have d cube by dm cube, and when we differentiate things thrice, we get this expression. So now we will have to find the roots of this equation. So 12m minus 8m cube equals 0. So that gives m equals 0 and m equals plus or minus root 3 by 2. So these are the roots. And correspondingly v will become 0 and plus or minus root 3 rt. So these are the discrete velocities now. Now to the weights. So we can, for each of these three, we have now found 3 points, m1, m2 and m3. m1 is 0, m2, 3 are plus or minus root 3 by 2. So corresponding to each of these 3 points, we'll have to find out the weights. So by using this expression, so now W1 becomes root pi, 2 by 3 root pi. W2 and 3 both are equal to root pi by 6. Now when we use this in our integral approximation, so we can, instead of this, for m power 0 integral, we have something like this, summation wi into 1. So there we get root pi. So if you compare it with the previous case, we also got root pi. So this was also root pi, this is also root pi. If you look at the second case, for this is for m power 1, here we are getting 0. The previously also we got 0, now also it's 0. So that's fine. The next thing, m squared, we get root pi by 2. Previously we got 0. So this is better than this one. Next is for m cube, we get 0. So this is correct. Here we get to evaluate m power 4 also. It's 3 by 4 root pi. Here m power 4 also will turn to 0. So now we can, so this approximation will be correct beyond some point, beyond some number of velocities. So if we take that specific number of velocities that are required to make this approximation exact, then we are actually solving the right integral. We are solving things exactly. There is no mistake in our approximation. So yeah, we can that in that way we'll have to choose the discrete velocities. So yeah, with n equals 3, we get things to be exact. The integrals are exact, so n equals 3 is quite sufficient for 1D case. So these will be the velocities. Previously I talked about lambdas, right? So they will be 0, and here we taken a lambda 1. So let me take lambda 1 to be root 3 RT, lambda 2 to be 0, and lambda 3 to be minus root 3 RT. So previously during our, when we were talking about algorithm, I used the so-called lambda. So that will be determined in this way. The velocities are determined in this way basically. So this is it. So in LBM, there is one advantage. You see, when we split the LBE, lattice-Boltzmann equation, into two equations, okay. So this is our lattice-Boltzmann equation, right? So this has been split up into collision and relaxation steps. This is collision or relaxation, and this is streaming or propagation. There are two different steps now. So if you look at it, the streaming step is exact. So since we take the lambda has been taken, right, found through this Hermite polynomial thing. So that way we find lambda. Still delta t is, we fix the grid delta x in some way. So lambda, if taken as delta x by delta t, then this step will be exact. The point, things from one point will go exactly to the neighboring point. The streaming step will be exact if this point is satisfied. So we still have delta t to be determined. So we have to take delta t such that this condition is satisfied. So lambda is determined from the Hermite polynomial thing. Delta x, you fix your domain. If you want, you can fix, or you can keep both of them as unknown, like both of them dependent on each other and optimize them accordingly if you want. Or you can fix the grid, like delta x can be fixed as some number, and then you can find delta t accordingly. So that way your streaming step will be exact. So the error only comes due to the collision step and the operator splitting part. And in lattice Boltzmann, there are different models like D1Q3. D1Q3 is the one that I have been talking about for a while, where we have three velocities. D1 represents dimension. D represents dimension, Q represents velocity. So D1 means one dimension, Q3 means three velocity, one dimension and three velocity model. So we have been dealing with D1 Q3 till now, where the model that I have been showing you over here was D1 Q3. So we have three velocities, F1, F2 and F3. At each point there will be three velocities, and each of them will move with some specific velocity. Say F1 with minus lambda, F2 with 0 velocity, F3 with plus lambda. So now F3 is going here, F2 from here will go like this, and F1 will go here. So this is at I, and this is at I minus 1, and this is at I plus 1. And I'm talking, this is at a different time step t and t plus delta t. So in the streaming step, your things are going to be exact, since delta t is in your hand. And similarly, F2 from this point, so from here, F2 will be going here, and F1 from this point will be going to I minus 2. And same will happen on the other sides as well. So from every point, your distribution functions are, after collision step, things are going exactly to the neighboring points. So this is with respect to D1Q3 model. In 2 dimensions, we can have D2Q5 or D2Q9 models. So where you see D2Q5, you can have different variants in D2Q5. So here is one point I. So you can have I plus 1 comma j, I minus 1 comma j. And this is I comma j. So you can have different velocities, F1, F2, F3, F4, and Fy is 0 comma 0 velocity. Similarly, for this cross kind of model also, you can have, this is also D2Q5. This will be I plus 1 comma j plus 1, I minus 1 comma j plus 1, and so on. And each of these models will have some velocities, and you have 0 velocity also. And D2Q9 is combination of both of them. Something like this. You have 9 velocities. For 3 dimensions, you can have 15 velocities, 27 velocities, and so on. So this way you discretize the velocities, and you do collision step at each point, and you do propagation step or streaming step. Exactly, the particles from one point will jump exactly to the neighboring point. So that is one typical characteristic of lattice-Boltzmann method. So any doubts here?
No, ma'am, nothing in particular.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll stop here. Yeah. And we'll complete the lectures here at this point. We have seen PDEs and incompressible solvers and compressible. Under incompressible solvers, we have seen pressure elimination and lattice-Boltzmann methods. We have not seen pressure-based or density-based methods and all. Under compressible solvers, we have seen quite some upwind schemes like kinetic schemes, flux difference and flux vector splitting schemes. So yeah, like if you have any doubts in these contents anytime, you can always contact me. Yeah. So at this point, we'll close the lectures. So
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.